Thanks, Chloe.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Okay, great. So hi everyone, welcome to our concluding session here. We've got 10 lightning talks for you. My screen sharing is paused. Resume share. There, Chloe, am I good?
Yes, I see your mouse moving.
Okay, great, thank you. We've got our lightning talks for you now, an hour of 10 presentations, 4 minutes each with 3 breaks for questions. I do hope that you'll stay to the end because I've just got a few parting remarks for you before we go back into our spaces. So, we're going to take the talks in order of the program. Each speaker has 4 minutes to present and they'll know their time is up because I'm going to make their slide go away. Feel free to sync your timers and start 4 minutes when we get going. The order is thus, Leslie, Erica, and Rachel, and then we'll break 5 minutes for questions. I think that's about all I've got. Dr. Chan, you ready to go?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, over to you.
So my collaborator, Bud Hall, is in a scheduling conflict, so I'll be speaking on his behalf. Bud Hall is a settler Canadian living on Lewangan territory in Victoria, Canada. He is the co-chair of the UNESCO Chair in Community-Based Research. And my name is Leslie Chan, and I'm an immigrant living in Toronto. I lead the Knowledge Equity Lab at the University of Toronto, Scarborough. The University of Toronto occupies the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Our poster today is based on a contribution to the UNESCO consultation process for the development of a recommendation on open science, which will be adopted by 197 nation states in November of 2021. We would like to thank Elaine Lamberger for designing the poster and help us think outside the academic boxes. In particular, our poster is based on a longer policy brief titled Open Science Beyond Open Access for and with Communities, a Step Towards the Decolonization of Knowledge. It was written in collaboration with the Canadian Commission for UNESCO, and it is a call for the broadening of the concept of open science. This paper is accessible via the link on the poster. We are calling for open science to move beyond the limits of Eurocentric knowledge towards inclusion of the global ecologies of knowledge and ways of knowing, including indigenous knowledge and knowledge from the global south. Like the diversity of knowledge, openness are also practiced in many ways that do not fit into a simple universal definition. We favor instead the idea that openness with and for communities is highly situated in accordance to the knowledge in the particular conditions, places, and culture in which they are produced. Therefore, knowledge always reflects the social identities and social location of the knowledge producers, who should have the right to determine what is to be open or not. So we call for policymakers to support the diversity of knowledge production and decenter the powerful legacy institutions that continue to structure the highly unequal knowledge system. It is only through fundamental rebuilding of the existing system with equity principles at the core that a truly diverse ecologies of knowledge is possible. Thank you. We're under 4 minutes, right?
You are 2 minutes, 40 seconds. Well done. Thank you so much. All right, that'll give us a couple more minutes for questions. So please do think about questions and drop them into the Q&A box. If I've got any of my angels out there helping me with the questions, your help is always welcome. All right, we're gonna move on to Erica now, please. Erica, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, thank you.
Okay, over to you, 4 minutes, go.
Thank you. So I am Erica. I'm a Master of Information Studies candidate at the University of Ottawa. I'm currently working on a thesis under direction of the ScholCommLab based in Ottawa and Vancouver in Canada. So onto our poster here. In our study, we recognize that data is not currently evaluated in the academic and scientific reward system. So to baseline, what this means is that data collection, cleaning, sharing, and reuse are not necessarily considered meaningful contributions. And this leads to the reward system severely lagging when it comes to recognizing data and the benefits of an open data system. So here we have placed emphasis on tenure and promotion opportunities and how this is, there's a lack of data being used as a legitimate form of contribution for the folks who are trying to gain tenure in their academic institutions. So basically data sets and such are not necessarily equating to an academic publication. So our contribution here in the actual study, we are using a mixed methods approach. We're finding evidence that data is useful, that it is meaningful, and that it is used. So we ultimately are seeking to improve the role of data sets in scholarly communication, and we are doing this by looking at data citations. So we're basing this on data cite data, and we are looking to see if there are patterns across different disciplines, and we're then studying what the underlying motives to cite and share or not cite and share might be. So we are conducting bibliometric analyses of research data sets to look at data sharing. And the focus here is on differences between different disciplines. Then we will also be looking at researcher motivation to cite or not cite by conducting a survey among researchers from different disciplines and career stages. So our contribution ultimately is to generate empirical evidence on open data practices that is essential to the development of meaningful data metrics. So I do invite you to take a look at our poster. Stephanie posted a link to it in the chat for a full resolution link. If you have any questions on the poster or the study, you can reach out to me or to Stephanie Hochstein, she's the PI. And our next presenter, actually Rachael, is doing the Make Data Count initiative, and it's, I feel, the perfect tie-in to what we've looked at here.
Great, thanks very much, Erica. Also ahead of time, it's almost like we told everyone to prepare for 3 minutes, which could be a possibility. That's great, thank you. So Rachael, let's hand over to you. I think, there we go.
Perfect, thank you. And Erica, thank you for providing such a great preface to my presentation. So I'm also I'm based at Crossref. I'm speaking on behalf of Make Data Count, which is a global community-led initiative focused on the development of open data metrics. Any of you who aren't familiar, data citations are just references to data in the same way that researchers routinely provide a bibliographic reference to other scholarly resources. Data are often shared and becoming shared more often, but they're often not cited in the same way as journal articles and other publications, and it would be great to change that. So in our poster, we wanted to reinforce the importance of citing data in publications. In the work that I've been doing, I've found that these often aren't collected, passed right the way through publication workflows, or provided in a way that they can then be reused by the community once an article is published. A lot of scientific research results that are shared today are just a summary of what researchers did and found. So without the underlying data available, it's really difficult to verify and to replicate results. So if data could always be made available with publications where applicable, then transparency of research would be greatly improved. I thought Kristen Mertan's point about the ASAP work yesterday was really relevant in terms of funders working on this across Alzheimer's research. And also relevant to funders saying that they're not sure how they'll track compliance with data policies. This is one way to do that. The availability of raw data also allows other researchers to reuse the data for replication purposes, but also to answer new research questions. And when researchers cite the data they use, then this forms the basis for a data credit system. So right now, researchers aren't really incentivized to share their data because no one's looking at data metrics and measuring their impact. So the work that Stephanie and Erica and their team are doing will help, and data citations also a step towards changing that. In terms of how to support this, from the publisher side, baking it into your journal policies and publication workflows. There's some RDA groups that are making good recommendations around this. It's encouraging researchers to cite data with clear guidelines and expectations in journal data policies. Passing that information to Crossref as part of the content registration process. From the Crossref side, we openly expose the metadata via APIs like event data, and we provide a ScholX endpoint, which provides the data in a standard framework for use by lots of different stakeholders. So that means that researchers, repositories, funders, institutions, and others are able to access, aggregate, and report using open data on these important research outputs. So thanks to Daniela Lowenberg and Amber Budden for helping me to put together the poster, and said you can find out more at makedatacount.org. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Rachel. Okay, we've got one question so far in the box, so feel free and feed us in some more, but we will break again after another round of talks. The question is for Erica, and I'm not sure to what extent Rachel may have addressed this as well, so help me out. But Erica, if data sets become part of the reward system, did scholars have any sense of how quality of data sets should be evaluated with respect to rewards, citations to quality of preparation, and reuse?
So I'm actually going to call on Stephanie here. I know she's not a panelist, but she knows quite a lot more than I do. Are we able to pull her in for a second? Or maybe just in the chat if she could answer that?
Yes, what's her last name?
It's H-A-U, right, Stephanie? H-A-U?
Gotcha, thank you. Yes, I can allow her to talk here.
Great. The more the merrier.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so excellent question, Lisa. And the part with quality of data, that's exactly what we also want to find out. And that's why this grant or this research project is taking a mixed method approach. So first, what we want to do is using quantitative data to really just look at patterns across disciplines using DataCite data. But then the second part is using qualitative methods like semi-structured interviews and also doing surveys to investigate more about, you know, the differences of data sets, what's behind it. And we're also completely aware that once you turn data into metrics, which we think can help to kind of evaluate them a little bit, that people will start gaming the system, and that maybe what used to be, that we see something like salami publishing, salami slicing for data publications as well, that people will start instead of just uploading one large data set with multiple components, maybe just slice it up into 5 if, you know, 5 counts more than 1. So we don't want to repeat the mistakes that have been made in the past by the quantification of research output, and especially in bibliometrics. So that's why we're using this mixed method approach. But it's an excellent question that we don't have the answer to. So we're just getting started with the grant, and I hope we find out more in the next 2 years.
Thanks very much, Stephanie. Okay, I'd like to ask a question, if I may, of Leslie. And we've got 2 minutes and 31 seconds. I'll see if I'm able to articulate it. But so I'm thinking about diversity, and I'm thinking about how we create dialogue across groups who come from different perspectives, which is a challenge in lots of different ways. What Leslie has represented to me today is, and I'm a Canadian from Western Canada, is a respect for a community also from Western Canada that I don't understand yet. So, you know, in some ways, Leslie and Bud and I are starting in a similar place. We're Canadian, and Bud is a professor at University of Victoria, where I went, so I can relate to some of those things. But Leslie, you're using language that I have yet to learn, and I wonder if you have a couple of tips for me to begin to breach that divide. Now, I know you've written extensively about it, so I need to read your work, but, you know, are there a couple of things that you could leave with me today to begin my journey?
So the reason we began with acknowledging the land on which we live is to recognize that the land on which we live were occupied by Indigenous people for thousands of years, many generations, and Indigenous knowledge holders have a lot to teach us. But over the years, academia have systematically excluded their knowledge, not only excluded the language, but systematically erased them from cultures, our cultural memory. So around the world, we see a lot of these knowledge communities have a lot to share and teach us, but we have always focused on a very narrow set of science and scholarship that are then published in the journals and the books that are also controlled by a very small set of powerful legacy institutions, the publishers in particular. And so they really structure of what our students learn. And over the years, our students learn the same canons and the same kind of a set of ideas. They're not exposed to the diversity of ideas out there. Yet our students come from all over the world. They don't see themselves reflected in the kind of knowledge that they grew up with. So the idea of what we're advocating is that we need to recognize knowledge exists everywhere, not just in the academy. In fact, I'd always say 99% of the knowledge exists outside of the academy. So if we really want to have open science, open knowledge system, we need to recognize that there are lots more that we need to engage with, particularly with the communities that are living their lives on a daily basis. COVID is a perfect example.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leslie. Okay, let's move on. Our next presenters are Christina, Maria, and Mate. Christina, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm the marketing manager for our Open Access Books programme at Springer Nature, and I'm speaking to you from London. I'm here representing our community project group to tell you about the new Open Access Books Toolkit hosted by OAPEN, which will be launched next week. In case you're unfamiliar with OAPEN, they are a not-for-profit organisation based in the Netherlands that works with publishers worldwide to build a quality-controlled collection of open access books through the OAPEN library and the directory of open access books. So what is the OAPEN Open Access Books Toolkit? This online toolkit is for authors in all disciplines around the world to find out more about how to publish an open access book. This poster describes the content of the toolkit and the journey in developing it, which I'll talk a little bit about now. The toolkit was created by a global and diverse group of researchers, publishers, and research support, as well as funders and organisations like OASPA and JISC. This toolkit aims to help authors better understand open access for books, increase trust in open access book publishing, provide reliable, stakeholder-agnostic information and easy-to-find answers, and to provide guidance in the process of publishing an OA book. It's been about 2 years in the making, so why have we been working on it? The idea for this toolkit came about in a researcher-to-reader conference workshop, which was led by Springer Nature and the University of Glasgow. Discussions in the workshop concluded that a trusted single resource was needed to tackle the lack of awareness and understanding amongst authors about open access book publishing, as well as common misconceptions about licensing and quality, all of which form barriers in the transition to OA books. So by having all of this information in one place, we felt it would help lighten the burden for authors who might be trawling through different websites to find the information that they need. The toolkit was then developed in a series of workshops for authors, hosted by the Universities of Oxford, Glasgow and Utrecht, in collaboration with Springer Nature and OAPEN, where we asked researchers and authors a range of questions, such as what their perceptions of open access and OA books are, their challenges, experiences, and what kind of resources they would find most useful. The team at Research Consulting then helped us shape a proposal for the toolkit, which was then collaboratively written by the editorial advisory board. The end result is a series of around 30 short articles which touch on different topics, including FAQ, myth-busting, and a glossary. Users can browse the toolkit or select articles relevant to the phase of the research lifecycle they're currently in. Onto our future plans. The toolkit will be launched next week on Wednesday, the 30th of September. We hope that this toolkit will be useful not only to book authors, but also to research support, librarians, and other publishers for their authors. We want the academic community to get involved by spreading the word about this toolkit and by providing feedback for further development. If you'd like to be notified about next week's launch and future webinars, such as the OA Books Network and the Frankfurt Book Fair, please sign up to the Toolkit newsletter via the link on the poster. And we'll be using the hashtag OA Books Toolkit on social media. Thanks for listening.
Perfectly timed. Thank you so much, Christina. Okay, moving on to Maria.
Hi, everyone. I am Maria Gould from California Digital Library, and I lead the research organization Registry project, better known as ROAR. So I expect many of you have likely experienced a need to identify and track institutional affiliations for publications and other research outputs, whether that's because you're a publisher trying to get clean affiliation data to feed into OA agreements, or perhaps you're a librarian or research administrator trying to measure institutional research outputs, or perhaps a funder trying to track projects that you've supported. And I expect that many of you have also experienced a number of challenges when it comes to working with those affiliations, either because this affiliation information isn't available at all because it was never collected to begin with, or maybe it only exists as free text strings that need to be disambiguated and cleaned up, or perhaps because that information is only available in a closed system or closed database. So ROAR is here to solve that problem, or attempt to solve that problem with your help and support. So ROAR is a registry of open identifiers for research organizations, specifically focused on affiliations. There are about 98,000 organizations in the registry right now, each with a unique ROAR ID. The ROAR data is completely open, it's CC0, it's interoperable with other organization identifiers, and we also have a public API and data dump, as well as different tools for using ROAR IDs to clean up existing messy, probably messy affiliation data. So ROAR is already being integrated in various publishing systems and supported in Crossref and DataCite metadata. Also going to be adopted by ORCID as one of their institutional identifier options. ROAR, if you're wondering how is this different from other identifiers that are similar, it's really the only identifier that is completely open, specifically focused on affiliations and being developed as a community project. So I encourage you all to start using ROAR IDs right now so we can collectively leverage the power of identifiers to enrich scholarly infrastructure and scholarly metadata. And this is really a collaborative effort. There are a number of ways to get involved, so please get in touch.
Great. Thank you very much, Maria. Okay, Mate, we're making good time here.
Thanks, Jennifer, and thanks for the opportunity. So my name is Mate Palfy, and I'm a community manager at the company of Biologists. I'd like to give you an overview and share some outcomes of the project preLights, which is a preprint highlighting platform that the company of Biologists launched in 2018. So as you're all aware, there's been a huge increase in preprint posting in the life sciences in the past 6 to 7 years. So one of the main aims of launching this platform was to help scientists navigate the preprint literature by selecting interesting preprints for them and providing digests of the work. So the other aim was to facilitate public commenting and thereby build trust in preprints, and also to engage authors and a discussion of the work before it is formally published in a journal. So the very core of preLights is a diverse group of now over 250 early career researchers who come from many different fields across the life sciences. So they select manuscripts from preprint servers, until now mainly from bioRxiv, and they write a sort of news and views type of digest of the work. And here we really encourage them to include why they chose the preprint and give their thoughts on what they like about the work and how it moves the field forward. So just to give you some numbers, we've now had over 900 preLights posted on the website, and the median time from the preprint being posted on the server to the highlight going on our website is about a month. So each preLight post gets its own DOI, and it's also indexed on multiple places, including Europe PMC. And once the preprint is formally published in a journal, we automatically link to the version of record on the site in a similar way that bioRxiv does this. And we've seen that 93% of preprints that are highlighted get published in a journal within 2 years. And when you look at a 1 year, it's 80%. So I want to move to one of the key roles of preLights is engaging preprint authors. And the early career researchers, they raise questions about the work and email these questions to the authors, and then they can then answer these questions at the end of the post. And we've been glad to see that 60% of the posts have an author response. We've also had positive feedback from authors telling us that they've incorporated some of the suggestions that these prelighters raised in the post. And we've just actually started encouraging these prelighters to also get back to the authors once their work is published in a journal, and ask them what were the key changes they made to the work as a result of peer review. So we're hoping this will be useful information to people who read the post after the work is published in a journal, but also that further help demystify the peer review process. And finally, since we're talking about a global change, I just wanted to mention 2 projects initiated by the members of the preLights community as a response to the pandemic. And a response to the surge in COVID-19 preprints. So they've created a website called covidpreprints.com that curates important COVID-19 preprints along with reviews and discussions if they're available, and places these preprints on a timeline of events of the pandemic. And another project was doing a meta-analysis of preprints, COVID-19 preprints, and you can find this on bioRxiv, Fraser et al. 2020. So thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Thanks very much, Mate. Have we got any questions for our 3 recent presenters? I've got one, Mate, in the meantime. I'm sorry, I didn't hear if you were recognizing the early career reviewers for this work. Do you have a connection with Publons? Is it formal enough for them to get a citation for?
Yeah, so actually at the moment we're just figuring out, we would like to have it acknowledged on ORCID. So ORCID now also has this function of that you can acknowledge reviews. So we're not a journal, but we're looking into how this will be possible on ORCID. So at the moment, how they basically get credit is they all have their profile on the website. So people can find them, and then they can, it's basically a portfolio of all the preprints I highlighted. They can easily find that, but we are definitely thinking of ways to credit them.
Great, and can I add on to that and just ask how you're generating readers for the reviews, just because I'm thinking about the opportunities for early careers to gain recognition and for their expertise and exposure. So I'm wondering what special efforts you may make to get readers for them.
So one of the main ways is, of course, through Twitter. So all of these preprint highlights come with a tweetable summary. So we ask these early career researchers to make a snappy, engaging, 1-sentence summary of the work. And this is then always tweeted with for example, with a figure of the preprint. So I think we get like around 40% of the readers come to our website through Twitter. But also, we're also trying to highlight in different other ways, also through our journals. So the company of Biologists runs 5 journals. So we sometimes also feature these highlights on our snippets. So we have these short news bits on our website. Or also in the table of contents, we have sometimes a monthly extract of preprints in the field of the journal.
Great, thank you. I would like to continue to ask Mate about his successes in getting busy scientists to spend time editing the reviews and writing snappy tweets, but I will stop there and move on to our next batch of posters. We have got Vincent, then Daniel, then Thomas, and then Stuart. So Vincent, let me bring up your poster.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, you are all set, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Vincent van Gerven-Oei and I'm co-director of Open Access and scholar-led publisher Puncton Books. Recently, both the UKRI and Plan S have formulated definitions of open access that would exclude Creative Commons non-commercial licenses from the definitions of open access proper for monographs. And the rejection of CC, BY, and C licenses can be attributed to what appears to be a common sense assumption in the journal publishing world, especially in the STEM fields, namely that the content of any open access article should be able to be reused even for commercial purposes. Because most articles are born digital, it is also assumed that they only consist of content and that they are medium agnostic. However, automatically mapping these definitions and practices onto monographs in the field of humanities and social sciences has unintended and perhaps undesirable consequences. Books are categorically distinct from journal articles. Journal articles are medium neutral carriers of content, often automatically or procedurally designed in an automated text to PDF or XML workflow. But the very form of the book itself is historically embedded. The form and shape of the scroll, codex, and book has been the project of human creativity, taking up a prominent place in the history of design. It is this designed aspect of the book as cultural object that needs some form of legal safeguarding, even if the content of the book itself is open. Here we encounter a limitation of the CC licensing scheme adopted for open access publishing. It cannot distinguish between content and form, whereas the prohibitions on CC, BY, and C licensing put forward by Plan S and suggested by UKRI make sense from the perspective of the free flow of content. They produce a category error with regards to monographs, which, and I'm sorry to point this out, is partly because of the way in which the conceptual frameworks from STEM research are often mapped onto the open access debate without considering the knowledges and practices from the humanities and social sciences. Erroneous claims that were made yesterday about the supposed existence of pure data outside the vicissitudes of human interpretation, I think, are a case in point. It's the same type of category mistake, I think. For lack of a better alternative, a CC, BY, and C license, which marks a monograph following the Creative Commons definition as not primarily intended for or directed towards commercial advantage or monetary compensation, and I stress primarily, gives a minimal protection against the abuse of the creative and artistic product that is a book. At the same time, I hope that this proposition will also stimulate the debate on where the Creative Commons licenses initially developed for online born digital content can be automatically mapped onto all products of the human spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. Okay, some questions in there to get answered if we've got the right people around the meeting still. Let's move on to Daniel on towards open physics.
Hi everyone, my name's Daniel Keirs. I work at IOP Publishing, which is a society publisher focused on the physical sciences. Our poster summarises some of the findings from some analysis we did into the evolution of open access in physics over the past decade. Now, our focus was primarily on Gould OA, and that is immediately accessible and supported by some form of business model. And we wanted to understand where physics is on the journey to open access and hopefully inform some of our future focus. Overall, what we found was rapid open access article growth alongside relatively flat subscription article growth over that period, with the proportion of open access rising from only around 3% to well over 20% last year. Now, when we sort of look more closely at these numbers, we found that if the same growth trend were to be maintained, then theoretically, physics could become fully Gould open access by around 2025, 2026. But to maintain this kind of historic growth would require lots more progress on the known challenges around global funding and academic incentives for open publishing, and also no doubt a degree of pragmatism around routes to achieving open access. The physics superpowers of Europe, United States, and more recently China have driven much of the physics open access growth that we saw, arriving, we thought interestingly, at not entirely dissimilar proportions of open access, despite adopting quite different policy approaches. All three are seeing more open access articles published in fully open access journals, but the growth rate of hybrid open access has been faster. Fully open journals that regularly publish physics articles, whether they operate on a gold or a platinum model, have increased significantly in absolute number, but they still represent a small proportion of physics titles. And these titles actually still serve a relatively narrow range of subdisciplines in physics. So it seems likely then that hybrid journals will need to be part of an open access transition for at least a little while longer to come, if all physics communities are going to be represented. Now, preprints also play a long-standing role in physics, so we wanted to look at those too. And papers deposited each year to the physics sections of archive have grown at about twice the rate of physics journal articles overall. But nevertheless, the majority of physics papers are still not posted to archive, with preprint activity focused really around certain subdisciplines like high energy physics and astrophysics. And we think this gap could actually be quite, well, relatively quickly and easily closed, thereby sort of rapidly expanding public access to physics results if preprints were considered a compliant route to OA in physics when funding support for Gould open access isn't available. So overall, we saw a great deal of progress that's been made towards open access, but with plenty of challenges to overcome and opportunities to pursue if we're going to realise the potential for full open access to physics research.
Thanks very much, Daniel. Okay, let's go on to Thomas, please. Second to last poster of the day.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. Hello, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. My name is Thomas Lamberger. I'm located in Germany, in Heidelberg. I'm the deputy head of scientific publication at EMBO. And today I wanted to present our new Review Commons platform for journal independent peer review in the life sciences. With Review Commons, with this platform, we want to improve the efficiency of the peer review process, the quality of the peer review, and the transparency of the process. So to do that, the platform offers a single round process that avoids the typical rounds of repeated cycles of peer review that we see across journals. We ask reviewers to write journal agnostic reports. And finally, we accelerate the transparency by enabling authors to post the reviews directly on preprint. Review Commons was launched in December last year, and we work with a consortium of journals, including PLOS, EMBO Press, the Company of Biologists, eLife, the Journal of Cell Biology and Molecular Biology of the Cell. So we are currently supporting two preprint platforms, bioRxiv and medRxiv. How does it work? Authors can submit their preprint or a manuscript directly to the platform. And after an initial editorial selection process done in collaboration with an academic board, we send the paper for in-depth review. And there, the peer review is done in a truly journal independent way. We explicitly ask the reviewers to write journal agnostic reports and to focus really on the science, its validity, its significance for the field. But we ask them not to comment on journal fit, so really to dissociate these things. And once the reports are back, referees can comment on each other's reports, which are then sent back to the authors. And Review Commons does not make any post-review decisions, so it's not a journal, it's really a pure peer review platform. The authors can then trigger the posting of these reviews on their preprint, including a response document where they can defend their point of view if points have been raised by the referee. At the same time, they can transfer the refereed preprint to one of the 17 journals of the consortium, and the identity of the reviewers will be sent to the journals as well. All these journals have agreed, and that's quite remarkable, they have all agreed to use these reports for their editorial decision without starting the peer review from scratch. And if the first journal rejects the paper, the authors can go to the second one, to the third, up to four transfers like that. So once the paper is published on the journal, the full review process is published alongside the paper as well. These are still early days. It's a pretty bold experiment in publishing and peer review. It seems to work well. 15 of the journals of the consortium have already accepted papers based on the review comments reports, showing that really these journal agnostic reports are usable, but also highly portable across journals. We have a collection now of more than 50 public refereed preprint, and this is of course increasing every day. What is the most remarkable, I think, is that 98% of the papers that have been accepted are going to be published by the journals were accepted without any additional reviewers. So essentially, we could cut completely these cycles of review, and this across multiple journals and across multiple publishers. So just a few words about the future. We will launch soon a resource, the early evidence base, that aggregates all these refereed preprint to make them a bit more usable and easier to access. And we are now thinking to expand the scope of review comments and expand the scope of the consortium of journals. So thank you very much for your attention.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Thomas. Okay, a couple of questions coming in. Please keep them coming. One more presentation to go with Stuart. Are you right side up, Stuart?
Oh, sorry, you're on mute, Stuart.
So I am, apologies. Okay, I'm Stuart Taylor. I'm the Publishing Director at the Royal Society, and I'm also on the OASPA Board of Directors. So the Initiative for Open Abstracts, I4OA, is officially launched today. Thank you to OASPA for giving us a platform and being a supporter organisation, as it was for the sister initiative I4OC a few years ago. I4OA calls on scholarly publishers to open their abstracts and specifically to deposit them with Crossref. So why open your abstracts? Well, making abstracts openly available helps scholarly publishers to maximize the visibility and impact of their journals and books. It also makes it easier for scholars to discover, read, and then cite research outputs, which in turn stimulates their inclusion in systematic reviews, facilitates text mining, natural language processing, and artificial intelligence techniques and bibliometric analyses. It also facilitates scholarship across all disciplines by those without subscription access to commercial bibliographic services. But for all these things to work optimally, abstracts need to be held in a single collection, rather than merely distributed across thousands of publisher websites from which they have to be laboriously scraped. It's true that many abstracts are already available in various bibliographic databases, but this is not ideal for various reasons. For example, because they require a subscription to access, because they're not machine readable, or because they're restricted to a specific discipline. So how can you help? 3 publishers have been involved in creating this initiative: Sage, Hindawi, and the Royal Society. And so far, 40 publishers have already agreed to support I4OA and make their abstracts openly available. I4OA is also supported by a large number of research funders, libraries, infrastructure providers, and open science organizations. As you can see from the graph on our poster, many publishers already have open abstracts in Crossref. If you're a publisher and you're not sure, check your Crossref participation report. So if you already have open abstracts, please join us right away. On the other hand, if you don't currently deposit your abstracts as part of your metadata, please consider doing so and joining us. You're probably already depositing your basic metadata to Crossref in any case: author, title, journal, volume, keywords, etc. All you need to do is add the abstracts and they'll be open by default. Even if you haven't gotten around to doing this yet, you can still join I4OA. All you need is the intention. Again, if you look at the graph, the orange dots are supporting publishers, and some of them haven't got any open abstracts yet, but we'll be updating this graph on the website each month, and you'll see them move to the right. I'd like to thank my colleagues at the I4OA team for all their hard work in getting this initiative up and running, and already off to a great start. First and foremost, our great leader, Ludo Waltman, and the rest of the team, Helen Deuce, Ginny Hendricks, Bianca Kramer, Vincent Lariviere, Katrina McCallum, Cameron Nailon, Silvio Peroni, David Shotton, Cassidy Sugimoto, Aaron Tay, and Brian Vickery. So if you want to get involved or just find out more, our website is now live at i4oa.org, or just ask one of us. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Stuart, and congratulations to the team on the successful launch today. So, all right, taking a look at our questions here. Vincent, we've got a couple aimed in your direction. One is a question for you as to whether, if it was possible to distinguish the license for monographs between the content and the form, which is not at the moment. But in that case, would you advocate to have CC BY on the content and CC BY NC on the form?
I definitely would have a much more open license for the content than for the form. Yes, absolutely. I don't know whether there is any jurisprudence that currently exists for this separation. But it's certainly something that we should at least investigate, because as I said, Creative Commons licenses were never really made for this. And so we are using them because they are practical and there is like a minimum amount of jurisprudence around them as an alternative to standard copyright. But that doesn't mean that they are a good fit. And I think we should think about that together.
Let me carry on with the same questioner. So in that same context, would the CC BY NC also be necessary for ebook only purely academic monographs without mass market potential?
Well, this is also a good question. I would say that, and it's an interesting question, right? Because like, what is, let's say, the design aspect of an EPUB file, which is an XML file. So maybe we can turn the question around, is do we actually value enough those people who develop our CSS style sheets, those people who design our websites? What does it say about us licensing only content, but being rather depreciative of form? Whereas form is an enormously important component when it comes to legibility and understandability. And so, yes, I would say that maybe an EPUB is less designy, but maybe it's only less designy in a way, in reference to how a book looks. I have personally worked with CSS designers who are as skilled as any, hardcover print book designer. And why would we value their labor less, or protect their labor less? I would say. So it's a good question.
Yeah, I think I'm more clear what you're saying. Eric, you've got a question along those lines as well, but I wonder if it's a bit more clear now. Let me go to Stuart. Stuart from Arley, fabulous, wonderful initiative. How do you manage translated abstracts, i.e. when the full text is in another language, but abstracts are provided also in other languages?
Well, this is not a question that we've had to deal with head on yet with our existing participants, but all abstracts can be text mined, so we'd encourage you to deposit them, whether they're in English or whatever language they're in, certainly.
Great, thank you. That was my computer binging, sorry about that. Thomas, Thomas, what can you say about the funding model for Review Commons?
Yeah, that's a good question. For the moment, it has been funded by a grant, a one-year grant from the Helmsley Trust. So it's essentially free for authors, free for journals, free for everybody. And we are looking now into various possibilities. One possibility is to have a peer review fee paid by the authors. We have to see how popular that can be. Of course, it should be discounted on an open access fee if eventually the paper is published. Or we could also imagine of a journal paid fee. And we're in discussion with publishers also to see if they would encourage and support authors to pay such peer review fee, provided the reviews are made then public on the preprints.
Thank you. Daniel, can I ask you a question? It's been a while since since I followed the CERN effort to open up journals in high energy physics, and I just wonder if there's a relationship between that effort and the increase in open access that you've seen. I know you made reference to it, but I was just wondering if there's an inspiration or correlation in there or not.
Well, I mean, when we drilled more deeply into some of the figures, which we sort of didn't have time to present today, you can definitely see different levels of progression in the different subdisciplines of physics, and high energy physics does represent quite a large chunk of the progress made in physics overall. And interestingly, it's a community that both has been sort of widely adopting of archive. The overlap is over 100% in a strange mathematical correlation. But basically, everything is posted on archive in that field, along with that community coordinating a sort of a sustainable funding mechanism through Scope 3. So that's quite a good example of different models working in parallel. And that's definitely the most sort of advanced instance of that that we found in physics, but an interesting case study, certainly.
Right. Thank you. Gosh, it's been so long, I'd forgotten the name of it. Okay, thank you. Vincent, we're curious about this one, so I got lots of questions coming in. Vincent, do you think the CC by ND, no derivatives, that license helps solve some of the issues around protecting form?
Yes, I suppose it does. I think that the stricter you make it, the more you protect it, right? So, whatever you do more than BY, the more you protect it. And I think there should be some type, there's a bit of a trade-off, of course, between openness and protection, and I see this. I think that what I said was mainly in response to the exclusion of NC, kind of categorically from recent proposals such as in Plan S. And I would, without wanting to give concrete examples, because I don't feel like calling out certain institutions, I think that in the end, we all know how PDFs circulate, and so do punctums. And I don't think that is a problem. I think that an NC license may provide at least some symbolic protection against the usage of monograph PDFs by bad actors in our system. Unfortunately, not everybody is community oriented. Unfortunately, not everybody in our system, in our ecology is oriented towards this concerted effort into making research more open and supporting this wide variety of small-scaled initiatives, such that everybody may serve as best as possible their particular niche of the scientific community. And we have found in the past that the NC license offers a little bit of protection against that. Of course, I think that like most of CC licensing, it is largely the symbolic protection.
Thank you. Stuart, did you answer a question offline?
Yeah, I did. Was I not meant to do that? Sorry.
Well, I don't want Vincent to feel interrogated. I want to move it around a little bit. So would you mind saying a little bit more
okay,
about
sure.
the license for OA?
So Jeroen asked a question about why we're not also advocating CC0 licenses for the abstracts. That would be great for sure, but we wanted to try and make participation as easy as possible for people. And obviously, if you've got a lot of content, changing all your licenses on your abstracts could be a bit of a hassle. Abstracts are not facts the way that things like titles and abstracts and page numbers are. So there is a copyright potentially around them. Some are, you know, they're under varying rights regimes, to be honest, but we just wanted to make things as easy as possible. So yeah, that's it.
Cool, thank you. All right, we got one more for you, Vincent. Wondering how you thought about the ND in place of NC. So if you were able to license form separate from content, have you thought about an ND as an alternative to NC?
So coming, let's say coming from the creative part of book production, I think ND is actually not, I would never use an ND because I like sampling, I like reuse, I like all forms of creative appropriation, but for me that is something else than commercial use. And so I would say honored, and most designers are honored if other people copy their work because it means that it is visually appealing and that it is apparently so culturally resonant. That is a very different thing from using something that is made for public consumption for the public and then monetizing on it. So I feel that these two are really quite different forms of CC licensing, at least coming from a book design perspective.
Great, thank you very much. Okay. Well, Vincent, you may want to consult the Q&A before you hang up today because there's lots of curiosity. But while we're on the line, just for 3 minutes, if the others don't mind, what about Sharealike?
Well, for Puncton, we use an SA type license. I think that is definitely a possible protection against commercial reuse of form. So yes, this may be another one that could be useful. Although, again, there is a difference in nuance, right, on what precisely it implies for the actual object. And I think that this is also the weakness and the strength of CC licenses, right? So the strength is that there's so few and that you can put them on anything. The weakness is that their generality may at some point, you know, conflict with specific forms of cultural objects, such, you know, works for a journal very well, but for a book it's more difficult because there are more components, and then for a song maybe there are other things you may want to consider. And there, as somebody at least in the chat points out, I have no eye on the Q&A at the moment, these are also really related to social practices and community standards. And I think that is an enormously important aspect of the discussion, right? And that's part of what we're doing here as well. And that is also, you know, what is being created by, let's say, standards set by Plan S. They are a reflection of community standards. And so that's why I wanted to bring this up for discussion, is like, maybe we shouldn't be so immediate about delimiting these types of licenses simply because they do not accord with what a certain part of the scientific community considers to be true open access.
Great. Thanks for that. So everyone, do feel free to carry on the discussion on Slack and Twitter, and we'll have the chat online for a little bit longer. But at this point, I'd just like to thank all of our poster presenters. You guys have done great. We really appreciate it. A wide variety of engaging topics. So thanks for bringing us up to speed on all this great work. Cheers to you. So we are just going to now move into our closing session, which is not really a session so much as a few comments from me, if I may. And I'm just going to get more comfortable. So I'm going to close the door so the teenager doesn't come in. And we're going to sit on the sofa because it's been a busy few days. Claire, Bernie, are you guys here? Do you want to just turn on your cameras? Chloe, if you want to too, just to keep me company.
Sure.
Great. So, before we get on go downstairs to the kitchen and get a drink, really is about what we're all about to do next, right? I just want to offer a few parting thoughts. So the first is that I'd like to thank my colleagues on the OASPA board for the opportunity to take this on. It's been just fantastic. Really, really good fun. And we must stop and thank the program committee for really crafting this work of magic. Abel, Katrina, Charles, Emma, Juan, Shuai, Xenia, amazing work. You're the ones who did, focused on the sessions and got the speakers here and did all the heavy lifting. So thank you. And 1,000 thanks to my colleagues on screen, Claire and Bernie and Chloe too, for your talents, your professionalism, and being so great to work with. Now, everyone, don't disappear right now, because I want to reflect a little bit just on what we've discussed and what we've learned. If this meeting is a fair indication, and I wonder what you think about it as a kind of a microcosm of what's going on in the world, it strikes me that there is a potent community and collaborative spirit behind open research, behind working across cultures, languages, and geographies to build the systems, the tools, the policies, and the behaviors that will fully exploit open access to the outputs of scholarship worldwide. Now, it's not new to me personally, it's probably not new to you either, to know that there is a lot of related activity happening in different corners. Although I have learned a great deal about what's happening in India and Indonesia and the countries of Africa that I didn't know about before. But I'm still struck by the opportunities for cross-sector collaboration here. So right now, I work with a small publisher trying to have a big impact. And in particular, you've got me thinking about the opportunities for connecting with local communities and scaling small. Pierre's talk really got me thinking. And I'm wondering if the economies of scale that drive commercial success in particular, now thinking back to what Sam was talking about, if the economies of scale, those economies of scale necessarily need to underpin our forward view of sustaining and maximizing open research. Or, and Kathleen really described this really well about an hour ago, is there a fabric or of threads that brings our smaller individual communities and sectors together? Whether those sectors are books or journals or they're commercial, public, nonprofit, or academic, is that fabric the foundation for something different? And the more talks I heard today, the more real that fabric seems to be. So we've got a particular opportunity before us. Hélène gave us the data about the importance of open research in a crisis. She gave us data to say that we can work a lot more quickly than we typically do. And it's clear that we've built the global network capable of bringing us together this way. Thank goodness the internet was as mature as it was when this pandemic set in, because we've been able to connect in these ways. Imagine if this had happened 10 years ago, right, or 15 years ago. Webinars would never stand up to this. So, but we just haven't used the network before. We've not used it fully before. At the same time, another thing that's been quite clear, I think, this week, from the very beginning of the meeting, is that there are long established cultural, economic, and linguistic behaviors impeding our collaboration. And we've learned a great deal about what it's like to operate in different contexts. I'd like to thank everyone for that. I've learned a lot, and it will help me to try and do better now. I've also found that this virtual environment that we're working in has been really useful in opening channels, across the world from region to region. We first of all been able to accommodate people online who are likely not to have traveled to Western Europe for the meeting. But it also seems that we've heard from more people than we might have usually. I find it a lot less frightening to type into a chat box than to stand up in a room of 200 people and approach that microphone. Now, I think I'm quoting either Bernie or Claire or both here, but we've remarked on that sentiment. And for me personally, it's also it's easier to understand different voices and accents in this system. You know, your voice is so much closer to me than normal, and it's not interfered with speakers and microphones, so it's so much easier for me to understand. And I am a little hard of hearing, so that could be me, but I've really appreciated that ease of access. So lessons learned, you know, food for thought for next year. And if Bernie hasn't circulated already, she'll be circulating the survey to get your thoughts. So finally, in closing, I'd like to encourage you again to please make contacts with the colleagues that you've heard from this week. Contact information is, for many people, is in the delegate list that Bernie has circulated. You can also grab them on the chat or see if they're on Slack or Twitter. And now, Dominic, I'm going to quote you. Don't let this moment pass. We don't have to just leave the room. In this network, you can touch anyone directly, so do it. You can also carry on. Bernie and Chloe are working through the night. Thank you very much, Chloe, to get the recordings out. And the recordings are now coming online, and there will be spots that you've missed. Sessions that you slept through, but you're awake now, so go ahead and listen to those recordings, and hopefully there's a way that you can carry on the discussion with colleagues on Slack. I'm sure the Slack will stay open a while, and on Wistia there may be some, you know, interaction thingy on the video platform, so help yourselves, and you can always find the OASPA community on Twitter. So finally, I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible over the next year, along with your cats and your kids. So thank you, everyone. Well done.